Amen. That ought to be good news as we continue this series of moving forward in 2021. And the only way we can move forward in 2021 is with a God who's ready, willing, and able. Oh, you can't move forward in 2021 like you need to unless you got a God who's ready, willing, and able. We started the year off understanding that we can move from doom to destiny just by changing your destination with a God who's ready, willing, and able to move you from doom to destiny. And then on the second Sunday, we learned that we had a God who wants to move us from struggling to surplus. And he could do it under any circumstances as long as we trust him. Then on last week, we learned that we can move from good to great. That's the kind of God that we serve. But we have to learn that we don't serve him like the world serves him, because the world serves by taking, and we serve by following and loving, and by serving and giving is the way we need to follow him. So what do we want from him this week? This week we want him to move us from hurting to healing. There's some hurting people out there. You could be hurting financially. You could be hurting spiritually. You could be hurting emotionally. You could be hurting physically in your body. How do you move from hurting to healing with a God that's ready, willing, and able? And we see that he is ready, willing, and able to move us from hurting to healing. In Matthew, if you open your Bibles, if you got your electronic devices, I want to encourage you to pull down our church app. You've heard all the great things you can do on it. You can connect with us. For those who are just worshiping with us for the first, second, or third time, we want to connect with you, not to give you information away, not to sell it. No, just so that we can connect you to God and his community. And then if you want to support this ministry, you heard all the great things we are doing, you can give right on our app, just right there at the bottom. You can tap the app. You heard that you can even join our worship events. In fact, we got a huge one coming up this coming Sunday on the 31st, an in-person. And to come to an in-person event, you have to register. And so please go out there. It's for our youth. So parents, you can't come in here without a child. Child, you can come in here without a parent as long as you're at least 16 years of age. But everybody else, you need mom and daddy to come with you. And so we want to encourage you to do that. But the other thing that you can do, you can worship from this app. And if you look down at the very bottom of it, you can just tap at the bottom, worship. And then you can hit our sermon notes. Then you can hit the day's date, which is January the 24th. And there you'll find our lesson text taken from Matthew, the 8th chapter. And I'll come from the NIV translation in this text here. And Matthew, the 8th chapter, for those of you who may have your Bibles. And we're going to look at verses 1 through 4 as we understand how to move from hurting to healing. And there we find these words. When Jesus came down from the mountainside, large crowds followed him. A man with leprosy came and knelt before him and said, "Lord, if you're willing, you can make me clean." Jesus reached out his hand and touched the man. Listen to this now. "I am willing," he said. "Be clean." Immediately, he was cleansed from his leprosy. Then Jesus said to him, "See that you don't tell anyone, but go and show yourself to the priests and offer the gift Moses commanded as a testimony to them." To appreciate this text and understand it in its historical context, we have to really take a look at where Jesus was in his ministry and what was going on at the time. Here in the 8th chapter, this first verse here is really a part of the last chapter there, as it says, as Jesus came down from the mountainside. Large crowds follow him. When you go back, this really takes you all the way back to chapter 5, when Jesus started, and he had his radical Sermon on the Mount, his radical and famous Sermon on the Mount. And in that Sermon on the Mount, Jesus was teaching some profound things. He was speaking as though he were God. And on this mountain, he was telling these Jews, remember now, Jesus came first to the Jews. And so he was telling this large multitude on the side of the mountain here how God wanted them to live in a world that didn't really accept them. I hope somebody's listening to me this morning. And so Jesus, from chapter 5 to into chapter 7 there, he gave his authoritative word. He laid out his platform. Can I talk plain? Let's say he's on the campaign trail. You know how politicians, they lay out their platforms. They lay out the things they promise they're going to do, and how if you do these things, life would be better for you. And so Jesus now, here he is on this mountain in chapter 5, starting at verse 1 to the end of chapter 7 there, and he tells them several things. He tells them first how to not to live like Gentiles. What do you mean? He gave us the Beatitudes. He says, blessed are those who what? Mourn, for they shall be what? Filled. And he says, blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth. He gives us all of these Beatitudes. Then he goes on and he tells us not, like I said, not to live like Gentiles. He tells us that even if a man looking at a woman, he has committed adultery. He tells us not to love like Gentiles, meaning that you only love those who love you. You know, it's easy to love somebody. I said this last week, who loves you. It's real easy to love folks who are kind to you. And you have some of them in your own household that are hard to love. Some of us, even when you're loving you're loving them, they're hating on you. Some of us get tired of loving folks like that. But thanks be to God that he didn't stop loving us when we weren't loving him. So he told us not to live like them. He told us not to love like them. He says don't even like them. What do I mean? He says, like, if someone slaps you on one cheek, turn and give them the other. I'm working on that one, so don't try me. Don't try me. I'm not there yet. There's just an aspiration. There's things we need to work towards. Yeah. Some of these are easier than others. Would you say so? Come on, talk to me. Can I talk plain? Yeah, some of them. Yeah. He says, now, if someone asks you to go a mile with him, he says, go 2 miles with them. So he's telling us not to like them, not to love like them, not to live like them. Then he says, don't serve like them. Some of us, we serve others expecting something in return. That's why we don't sometimes help folks who can't help us. Because we live in a world that, I do for you, you do for me. I don't want to do for somebody who can't do for me. And so this is the backdrop in which Jesus had been teaching. He hadn't done many miracles yet. In fact, he just changed water into wine. He'd helped a leopard. He'd exorcised a demon. But he had all of these people now because he's this new upshot preacher in town. And so folks come out to see something new. Is that right? You hear something new, you got to go see it. And so he had all of these fans instead of followers. Can I talk plain? Jesus has a lot of fans. But there's a difference when the word is follow. It doesn't mean there when it says the large crowds followed him. It doesn't mean that they were disciples. It means that they were hanging out with him just to see what he could do. You have folks who follow Jesus to see what Jesus can do, see if he can live up to his platform, to see if his authoritative word, if he had any authoritative works. They want to see if he had the power to perform what he said he's going to perform. Am I talking to anybody here this morning? Some of us, we were caught up waiting for Washington to do some of the things that they promised, but now they got to rely on Congress, and if that doesn't work, they're going to be stuck, and Congress got other agendas, but that's a whole nother story here. But Look at it now. Look at it. Look at the text. It says, as he came down the mountainside, the large crowds followed him. And so this is where we pick up in our lesson text with the story here, where it says in verse number 2, it says, a man with leprosy. Now, I just got to pause right there. Just talk about it here. It doesn't even give the man a name. The word with leprosy just describes it all. It's sort of like our COVID-19. Leprosy was a disease now that could be minor or it could be fatal. It could just be a little skin rash, or it could really be very life-threatening. In fact, if you had a severe case, where they had to put you on the ventilator, a severe case where it doesn't look like you're going to make it, you could have a severe case of leprosy to the point that it affected parts of your body. It could even cause your throat to be raspy so you couldn't hardly talk real well. All right. And then your skin could get very numb to the point you didn't have feelings. So you could suffer burns and breaks because people could drop things on you and you wouldn't know you had broken bones, and your fingertips and your toes could fall off. And it was an ugly disease. And people, the Jews, if you had it, you had to do some physical distancing. You had to do some social distancing. This staying 6 feet apart, this is nothing new. At the minimum you could get within a person was 6 feet apart. And if you got closer, you had to holler, unclean, unclean. You had to let folks know, COVID. Yeah, you would back up, right? Yeah, if I holler COVID, y'all. Isn't that what you would do? Come on now, talk to me, talk plain. So here's a brother now. He's got COVID. He's got leprosy. And he said that the man came. Now this unwretched man is not only socially separated, because he had a lot of these lepers lived in colonies with other lepers, with other people with the disease. Are y'all walking with me? They couldn't go home. They were the walking dead. So y'all watching TV, y'all think you're watching something new. Those folks look like folks with leprosy. Limbs fall off, can't feel anything, skin dead, right? Yeah, the walking dead. Not only was he socially unclean, but he was spiritually unclean. He couldn't even come to worship, couldn't come to church. And why? Because y'all wouldn't touch him? Y'all know how we do. Nose turned up at folks and they smell. They not like us. Yeah, this is what's happening. All right. And so society had it such that not only were they had to be socially distant, but when they had a real severe case, they had to be quarantined. Now, y'all think I'm making this up. Write this down. I want you to go back and read it. It's Leviticus, the 13th and 14th chapter. Go back and read it. You'll see all the prescribed steps that are supposed to be taken for someone who had leprosy. And so this is where we find this man now. He has this leprosy, but notice now how bold he is, how wise he is. It says he came, right? He came to Jesus. Now, here's a person who's outcast. Here's the walking dead. He's ostracized. He's unclean. He's not supposed to even be in the crowd. Are y'all watching this here now? And notice what the text says. He came and knelt down. He knelt down before Jesus. Now you know what the folks did, don't you? Oh yeah, they scattered. Unclean. See, he could get to the front of the line real easy. All he had to do was unclean. You unclean. Can you see the waters part? Unclean. Yeah, folks say, how did he get to Jesus? All he had to do was holler, unclean. Folks would just start moving out of the way. Unclean. You see, y'all got to read the text like it is. You see, it's right there. He didn't have a problem in getting there. Folks were moving out of the way. In fact, you wouldn't touch him. You don't want death to get a 2-for-1 special. Right? Jump off of you On the meat? No, That's why you stay your 6 feet, wear your mask, wash your hands. Unclean. Unclean. Y'all looking at the text? So he said he knelt down before him. Now, there's a lot of theological debate on what he actually meant when he knelt down before Jesus, because the word in Greek means to worship. All right. And the Jews were taught not to worship anybody but God. So why would this man come before another man that's a Jew and kneel down before him? They said because it's so early in Jesus' ministry, how could he even know that he was who he said he was? Well, there's a lot of speculation there, but the word is clear. It means to worship. It means that he understood that this was something unique about this man. He said either he is God or he's got access to him. Come on now. You're going to see this now. I'm going to make it plain, but I just want you to walk with me here now. This word means to worship. It means to bow down, and he humbled himself. He goes before him. He gets down, and he puts himself down. And I'm telling you, nobody's standing close. He doesn't have any problem with a crowd. They said it was a large crowd, too. It didn't say no small crowd. Right? He made his way through and he knelt down before Jesus. He humbled himself. Now, I can tell you the man's been looking for help. This isn't his first stop. He'd been around, but word had gotten around, must have got in the colony somewhere. There's a man in town who's done changed some water to wine. There's a man in town that exorcised the demon over there at the church over there across the street. There's a man in town that caused a young boy's fever to leave him. There's a man in town that was on a mountain speaking as though he were God. Because when Jesus was on the mountain, he said, "You've heard it said." All right, that means he was talking from the Bible. He says, "But I say." Now, when you talk about you've heard it said and I say, you're saying that I'm on the same level of what God says. He says he's a preacher. He's a preacher. He said, "Let me make my way." So not only was he wise, but he was worshipful. But he went into the presence of Jesus and he knelt down before him and he said, "Lord." Now here's another little inkling that he's got an understanding of whose presence he's in. Now I know in the Greek that the word Lord can mean master, it can mean sir, but the way Matthew uses the word Lord in his writing was only used of how his disciples referred to him as Lord and those who referred to someone that they needed great help for. So he recognizes him as someone with some power and authority. Walk with me clean. Now walk with me. Walk with me. It says, and if you are willing. Now let's just pause with this word willing. This word if, it doesn't mean if you have the power. No, he's not talking about his ability. Notice now, he says, if you're willing, you can. He didn't say you might be able to. He didn't say I think you can. He says you can. That's with confidence. Now he's got faith in this man's ability to make a leper clean. Now, y'all, can I just teach this just a little bit here? Because some of you in here, this doesn't matter whether you are sick physically, spiritually, financially, this still all applies to you. I don't care whatever hurting you got, this applies to you. And the thing that you see first now, that the man was bold enough, regardless of his condition, all right, to go before Jesus. That's some medicine there for us, because not everybody who's sick turns to Jesus. Some of us don't turn to him because we don't believe he has the power. Others don't turn to us because we don't want to obey and do what he says. All right, we know about him. Folks say, "Yeah, I know about him, but I ain't doing all that." Now, I'm going to challenge my Bible scholars out there. I know I got some. And for my novice, it's a good reading for you as well. But I want you to go through the Bible and search how many people who had leprosy of this degree were ever healed. And if they were healed, how did they get healed? I'm going to help you out. I'm going to tell you what I know. Then I'm going to want you to go find out. I want you to fact check me. I want you to see if what I'm telling you is true. You see, this is how you got to watch the news now. Because sometimes you just think it's the gospel. But if you got to do some fact checking, you find out they left out some facts. All right. Well, watch. There are only 2 people in the Bible that were healed from leprosy. And only one of them was an Israelite. And the one that was an Israelite was Miriam. God did it. And the other one was Nahum, was a Gentile. And Elisha, a prophet, did it. So the history of what this man is asking for, this is a huge ask. He's never known anybody to ever heal anybody from leprosy. But he says, if you're willing, you can. Y'all see that? If you're willing, you can. So he knows that only this healing comes from God. If you're hurting and you want to move from hurting to healing, you got to go to the one who's got all power in heaven and on earth. I don't care what your situation is. You need to have some Jesus spoken into. You need to come to him. Don't worry about who's around you. Don't worry what they're going to say about you. Unclean, whatever, ostracized, outcast. It doesn't matter. Doesn't matter your condition or your circumstance. Doesn't matter how bad off you are. This was the worst of the worst. Man has COVID-19 on a ventilator for a modern day version. Doctors have said there's nothing else we can do. He's been everywhere. He spent all of his money. Family can't help him, don't want him. Can't come home to see mama anymore. Want to go to church, can't go to church. Got a sign outside. You got COVID, we got one. You got COVID-19, you can't come in here. Is that not true? All over buildings, right? If you got it, you can't go in. You got to stay home for at least 14 days. Don't come near us. We're going to pray for you on the phone. Maybe we do some FaceTime or something. Y'all won't even drive by the house. Figure you're going to catch it from the car. Y'all won't even drive by. I ain't going by there, Pastor. Y'all don't want to jump off on me. Right? Walk with me now. Church folks. These were folks that followed him. Scattered. Fans. All right? Notice what the text said. Look what Jesus did next now. Notice in this next verse now. Jesus didn't say, whoa, what you doing bowing down to me? Notice now. And Jesus didn't say, what you doing calling me Lord? Jesus didn't say, wait a minute now, I'm not a leprosy specialist. Notice Jesus didn't say that. He didn't say, wait a minute. No, Jesus didn't say that. In fact, Jesus didn't say anything. Notice what Jesus did. Jesus reached out his hand. Now that shows you he was some distance. The man bowed down. The man didn't come right up on Jesus. He stood a little way, but Jesus reached out his hand. Man didn't expect that. Why? Because Jesus had done his earlier healing just by a spoken word. He told the man, son, be well. Didn't even go see the boy. So he figured Jesus could just speak a word over him. But look here. Jesus reached out and touched the man. The word said reached out. Touched him. Yeah, see, that used to be a slogan, reach out and touch. That wasn't new. Jesus. See, ain't nothing new going on. Jesus was the first one to reach out and touch someone. Now think about touch. Think about someone, had it been weeks, months, years, that someone has just gave you the human touch. Don't think that this COVID isn't wreaking havoc on folks. That's why we got some workshops next week. You got to sign up for them if you hadn't already. You got to get in because so folks are hurting more than not with COVID, but because of COVID. Did you hear what I said? Not with COVID, but because of COVID, because of the physical distancing and because of all that they're having you stay away from folks. Folks are dying just because they hadn't had human touch, human contact. Jesus said the first healing you need is just someone to, just a touch, just a touch. So let me give you your first focal point. I think I forgot that. Let me give you your first one. Our deplorable condition should not negate our, listen to this, surrender, total surrender to Jesus. That's what the young man did. He didn't let his condition, it was deplorable, wretched condition, hinder his going to Jesus. Totally. He surrendered himself totally. He bowed down and worshiped. But notice, like I said, Jesus reached out and touched the man. Notice what Jesus said next. He says, I'm willing. Now, I told you what this word willing means. It means he delighted in it. It means that he has the ability to, and it means he prefers to. So when the young man asked him to, he says, if you're willing, he says, if you delight in me, if you have he says the ability, you got the ability to do it, and that you prefer to do it. Not that you have the ability, not that you might have the ability, but you got the ability, and do you prefer to do it? Jesus said, I prefer to do it. That's what Jesus is saying here. He says, I got the ability. I got the power. Now, that's huge because who did we say had the power to do this? God has been the only one. That word I am. You see it right there? I am who I say I am. I am ready, willing, and able, to move you from hurting to healing. Let me slow down. I got another hour to go. Yes, indeed. I could stay on this all day. Because we're hurting out there. We're hurting in here. But you got to go to someone who can reach out and touch you. Just to touch, y'all. Just to touch somebody. He says, I'm willing. Notice what he says next. Be clean. Now he gives a spoken word. The power's in the word. Now, I know, see, some of the theologians have a problem with Jesus touching the man. Because I told you, if you touched it, you became unclean. Then that means Jesus needed to do 14 days. Jesus needed to be quarantined. But see, when you got all power, the unclean, you make clean. And because your power is stronger than the power that's in the thing that you got, Jesus can make your unclean situation clean. Your finances are unclean. Jesus can make it clean. Your marriage is unclean. Jesus can make it clean. Your children are unclean. Jesus can make it clean. There ought to be healing for somebody. And Jesus get into the situation. It doesn't mess Jesus up. Jesus messes up the stuff that's trying to mess you up. Notice what the text says. He says, be clean. That's a command. In other words, the leprosy doesn't have a choice. It's not like he can come and negotiate with Jesus. Well, can we have just a day, two more with him? Can this be a slow process? Notice now, Jesus says, be clean. Look what the text said next. It took 6 months. It took 3 years. It took 5 years. He had to do chemo treatment. It said that he had to go see some specialists. No, the text said immediately. Deliverance for somebody. Notice now, it says immediately he was cleansed of his leprosy, of his condition. What's your leprosy? What's got you in bondage? What's got you as outcast? What's got you as downtrodden? What's got you? Jesus can speak healing. Moving from hurting to healing. Let me give you a second focal point here. Jesus' compassion now for us outweighs our circumstances and conditions. Outweighs our circumstances and conditions. Jesus' compassion. Notice now, the man was in a deplorable shape. But that didn't negate what Jesus could do. What shape are you in? How bad off are you? How tough is it for you? What are you going through? Jesus loves you. That's what that word compassion means. Jesus cares more about you than what your situation or condition is doing to you. Isn't that good news? That ought to be healing for somebody. That's medicine right there. Let me walk on. Look at the next verse number 4 now. Look what it says. Then Jesus said to him, see to it that you don't tell anyone. All right? Don't tell anyone. All right? Just stop right there now. Stop. Now, Jesus, man's cleansed. But Jesus said, now, see to it that you don't tell anyone. This is still a command. Just like he told the leprosy, be clean. Now he's giving the man a command. He gave his leprosy a command. The man, he didn't give the command to the man that had leprosy. He gave the command to the leprosy. He said, be clean. Immediately, the leprosy left his body. Now, Jesus gives the man a command. The leprosy obeyed. Notice now, the leprosy didn't have a choice. Leprosy had to get up and get gone. Jesus turns to the man. Now it's your turn. Don't tell anyone. Go show yourself to the priest and offer the gift that Moses commanded. Now, stay here for just a little while. This is where I need to spend the next hour. Several reasons why Jesus told him not to tell anyone. First off, Jesus knew that there were people following him just for the sake of miracles. Oh, y'all didn't hear what I just said. Yeah. There are folks who want to come to Jesus for the things they want Jesus to do for them. And Jesus needed time. Remember I said this early in his ministry. For his ministry to develop, he doesn't want people to get a misunderstanding of why he's here. That's the first reason. The second reason is, when you go back and read Leviticus 13 and 14, chapters 13 and 14, Jesus now is being obedient. Oh, y'all say, what are you talking about? Jesus is here on God's mission, not man's mission, or woman's mission, or children's missions, or government's mission. No. He's here on God's mission. And so Jesus knows that the first thing that a person's supposed to do if they got leprosy is go show themselves to the priest. Go read Leviticus. And you'll see that it says, okay, when you have all this, go show yourself to the priest. Let the priest examine you. Okay? All right? Now let me just give you this little sidebar. A priest might declare that you're well, but only Jesus can make you well. Did you hear what I just said? A priest might be able to declare you well, but only Jesus can make you well. Is that not good news? All right, so notice here now. So notice he says, go show yourself to the priest. So that's the second reason. And then the third reason he didn't want this to happen, he wanted to see if the man's going to be obedient. Because there's power in obedience. Let me not jump ahead. And so notice he says now, and offer the gift Moses commanded. All right, there's a gift that he was supposed to give, whether it's 2 turtle doves or something of that nature. I think when you read all of that in Leviticus, that was to show his humbleness, that life had to be given for his cleanliness. Oh, y'all just got to walk with me here. And so then it says, and it would be as a testimony to them. What is Jesus doing? See, the word had already gotten out that this young preacher's in town, and he's around talking like he is God, and he didn't come through the Sanhedrin council. He hadn't talked to the Sadducees and the Pharisees. He hadn't gotten their seal of approval. And so Jesus wanted them to know that, hey, what I'm telling you comes straight from God. You see, because when the priests would see them, they know that only 2 people had only been cleansed from leprosy. Only 2 cases of this condition, and everyone would have known who this man was. This is a close-knit community like Concord. I mean, like places you go, like everybody know that boy got leprosy over there. Everybody know who got COVID in Concord. You see it out on Facebook, Snapchat. We call them prayer requests. Pray for Miss So-and-so because she got COVID. Pray for Miss LMA Sue because she got COVID. No, you just trying to put it out there. But you call it a prayer request that makes you look holy. Are y'all looking at this? Look what it says. Show yourself to the priest. Don't tell anybody. Now, when you go and read over in the book of Mark, the man wasn't fully obedient. on his way. He couldn't help because from where he was to where he had to go was about 40 or 50 miles. I don't know about you, but folks probably say, what happened to you, Herb? Well, I can't tell you, but I want you to pray for me because Jesus done cleansed me. But I'm on my way to see the priest like he told me to. But don't you tell nobody that I told you because I ain't supposed to tell them. Read the text. Read the text. Yeah. But the man made his way to see the priest. And I can just imagine the priest's face. Boy, who did this to you? What did you take? Because I just saw you yesterday. And when I saw you yesterday, you had all of this COVID. All of this leprosy all over your body. But the man said, I met a man named Jesus. He's El Shaddai. He's God Almighty. He's Jehovah Jireh, the God who will provide. He's Jehovah Nisi, the God who will fight your battle. He's Jehovah Shalom, the God of my peace. But he said, no, he's Jehovah Rapha, the God who will heal. He's the one who made me, who's the one who's cleansed me, the one who has all power in heaven and on earth. He's the one. He's the one. His name is Jesus, Mary's baby. The beginning and the end. He moved me from hurting to healing. But you see, here's the thing. When the priest makes him clean, he makes him clean for two reasons. Now he can go back into society. The boy can go get a job. He can come off of welfare. He doesn't need that government stimulus check. He just need to be able to go to work. And he can come back into my Father's house and he can worship in spirit and in truth. I can just imagine the priest saying, well, now, that boy, I can't deny what I see. But he said Jesus did it. See, some folks, Jesus did it. You got to tell folks what Jesus has done for you. You can't be sitting around holding it. Jesus is working in COVID. Jesus is moving folks from hurting to healing. Let me give you your last focal point here. Obedience is equally as important as faithfulness. See, a lot of us say we're faithful to the Lord, but we don't want to be obedient to him. The two go together. If you're faithful, then you got to do what Jesus said. Watch this now. If the man had never gone to see the priest, he would have never been declared clean. And he still couldn't go, even though his skin looked pure. He still wouldn't have had permission to go back into society, to be socially and spiritually clean. So his healing required, watch this, this is where most of you miss it. Your healing requires obedience. Not just faithfulness, but obedience. What did God tell you to do? What did he tell you to do? Most of us want to be faithful, but we don't want to be obedient. Your healing doesn't get completed with just faithfulness. Your healing gets completed with obedience. So as I said, this message is applicable to whatever your hurting is, whatever your condition may be. I just want to give you some steps to move you from hurting to healing. The first one I want to give you is true faith. Now, listen to this. Demands that you surrender your request to his will. Notice what the man said. If you're willing, you know I'm willing to be healed, but if you're willing to heal me, I'm going to surrender my will to your will. If you want something from God, we must first respect God and his will. We must be willing to fall down and worship before him. All right? The second one. Here's the thing we got to remember. The question is never Jesus' ability to heal. He's got the power, but it's his willingness. We got to understand that Jesus isn't limited in what he can do. Then the third one. This ought to touch somebody. Never feel you have no worth in the eyes of the Lord, regardless of what the world may tell you. Some of us live with people who, when we were young, told us we weren't ever going to be anything. Some of us live with scars from folks at work who talk us down all the time, who even ridicule you because of your faith. Some of you may not even know who the Lord is. So for that reason, you figure your life is so jacked up, messed up. Can I say jacked up? That you don't feel you're worth anything. Notice this man was as far of an outcast as can be. And the first thing Jesus did was reached out and touched him. You know what that says to someone? I see you. I recognize you. You're important to me. And then the last one. Trust that no situation is too grave for him. Some of you say, well, Pastor, you don't know how bad I messed up. No, I don't. But it's not too bad for God to fix it. I don't care what you're on the brink of. You may be on the brink of bankruptcy, and he can either keep you out of it or take you through it. All right? You may be on the brink of divorce. He can pull you back, or he can take you through. You may be on the brink of mental collapse, and he says that he can give you a peace which surpasses all understanding. Now, that may require counseling, that may require workshops, but he can do it. He can do it either over time or he can do it immediately. So what's the bottom line? Here's your bottom line. Jesus is both willing and able, listen to this, to move you from hurting to healing. You see that? So the question is, what does it take to move from hurting to healing? In your case, in your case, in your case, in your case, in my case. Well, I'm going to step out of the way and let Minister Fred come and tell you what it takes to move from hurting to healing, especially if you don't know Jesus. That's the first step. And he's going to share that with you. May God bless you. May heaven shine upon you, because you know a God who's ready, willing, and able to move you from hurting to healing. May God bless you. May heaven shine upon you. Amen.